So, when we think of the word prayer, Unitarian Universalists might have a wary eye about that word, right? So I specifically, when I was thinking about this sermon, I was thinking of Carlos Fraticelli. And I said, Carlos, we're going to pray today. And Carlos might look at me and say, I'm sorry, what does that mean? And we might all say that. And I don't think it's the word prayer itself that gets us. I think perhaps we tend to focus on what we sometimes see as hypocrisy in prayer. And people have been praying for themselves and against others for a long time. It's been going on for millennia, so nothing new here, okay? Just so we know. What we criticize in the hypocrisy of prayer, for example, is those that say, I'm sorry you're going through this hard time, I'll pray for you. And your response might be, hello, I actually need some support, some help, and a ride to the doctor, maybe support to end oppression, not just words of prayer. Or those that say, I'll pray for your soul, because I don't love the sin of your being gay or lesbian or an unbeliever, but I've been taught to love and pray for the sinner. Well, as the Bible tells us, you certainly need to take the plank out of your own eye first. And that might be our response. So yes, it is easy to pray for ourselves. It's easy to pray for prosperity, to pray for conversion and end to suffering, change other people's minds that don't agree with us or don't share our values. And I can assure you that soldiers on both sides are praying to the same God for protection and divine intervention. At the Unitarian Universalist Church, when it comes to understanding prayer, we live in an interesting intersection of awareness. So as you picture that intersection of roads converging, we see ourselves entering the intersection with our own experiences, wisdom, and insight. We see on one side community, those that we know and those in the wider circle, and we see on the other side the connection of the bigger picture of the universe. God, the transcendent, the divine, the bigger picture, nature, however you define that. And as these three roads converge, self, community, and the divine, we move forward into a path. And that path is service. What connects all of these roads at the intersection is service. As Carol mentioned, service to heal ourselves, service to connect with others in the bigger world, and the transformation that happens in the connection of service. And sometimes that transformation, the connection with the bigger picture, is not even with people that we know. People sometimes we will never meet. And the reason why I brought this up, because Carlos leads our collections for the food for the Arlington Food Bank. And that service is his prayer. We will not meet most of the people, if not all of the people, that are getting that food. So that is the element of, for some of us, as close as we will ever get to mysticism. Because service connects us to the divine, to one another, and to our inner spirit. That service, the spirit of service, speaks to connection. Thich Nhat Hanh, famous Buddhist monk, tells us, quote, we are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. We tend to be very specific in our thinking as Unitarian Universalists. What specific service can I provide to help with this challenge? We're very rational. With more complexity, we take our time and we don't adhere to simple solutions for complex problems. We might do a short-term Band-Aid for a fix. For example, we do provide food for people that need immediate support to eat. But we also look at long-term solutions. For example, we provide fresh produce that we grow at Tree Hill Nature Preserve Gardens. And that fresh produce raises the level of nutrition that the folks in Arlington at the food bank get to receive. And it also provides education on the possibilities for cooking these fresh nutritional foods that might be new to them. That is our prayer. In our spoken affirmation at the end of the service, we say, love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. That allows us to dwell together in peace, seek knowledge and freedom, serve humanity and fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. That is what we covenant with one another. So the term service for us directly connects us to the mystical intersection of the inner self, the other, and the divine. It connects us to a concrete form of love. Mother Teresa said, quote, "Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service." In the Drum Major sermon, Martin Luther King asked to be remembered as one who, quote, tried to give his life serving others, to remember his attempts to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and comfort prisoners. Yes, he said, if you want to say I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness, and all of the other shallow things will not matter. Service can be tough. Many are overwhelmed by the complexities in our world, the paradoxes, and in truth, the complete unfairness of life. Acts of service are indeed that foundation of our interaction with others. Charity is part of that, but acts of service for justice more deeply address the complexities, paradoxes, and unfairnesses of the world. As the saying goes, give a person a fish, and the person eats for a day. If you teach them to fish, they can eat for life. But in acts of service, justice goes beyond that. And that is where I think Unitarian Universalists have showed their strength and wisdom. For example, if the person is being denied the ability to reach the lake to fish due to gender, prejudice, racism, classism, oppression, then they will not be able to fish for life. Pope John the 23rd said, quote, "Never give in charity what is owed in justice." Redlining in Jacksonville not only kept black neighborhoods poor, it deliberately ensured that the values of the homes in those neighborhoods would decline. Acts of service and justice worked over decades to right that wrong. As Carol mentioned earlier, the work that we do with ICARE, the Interfaith Coalition for Action, Reconciliation, and Empowerment, to develop civil citations for nonviolent youth offenders is a perfect example of an act of service in justice. Thousands of lives, and I really mean that, literally thousands of lives of young people will be forever changed by not having a criminal record in their files. Now, if you notice that in ICARE is the word action. That is the power of prayer that we talk about. Pete Singer, a prominent Australian philosopher and ethicist and professor of bioethics at Princeton University, is widely recognized for his influential work in what is called utilitarian philosophy and effective altruism. He wrote a book, The Life You Can Save, Acting Now to End the World. It was originally written in 2009 and it's been updated. And he really presents a compelling ethical argument, which I think we can resonate with, that suffering and death from lack of food, shelter, and medical care are what we look at as morally bad. And if one can prevent such suffering without sacrificing something of comparable importance, failing to act is wrong. He emphasizes that even Small personal sacrifices, such as giving up a luxury item, can save lives when donated to effective charities. Unitarian Universalist Reverend Vale Weller reflected on Dr. Singer's book in her essay in UUA.org entitled Poor and Rich, Rich and Poor, saying that Pete Singer, quote, points out the ways in which global poverty works, what creates it and what sustains it, and what might actually reverse it. He educates the reader even-handedly. He takes up the variety of philosophical and practical arguments against helping the truly poor. Is it enabling? Will it work? Will it do anything? Before making his case that we must do something. Now, I don't think we're suggesting that you sell everything you own and go live with the poor. Although, if you know Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker, that's exactly what she and Peter Morin did when they went to Lower Manhattan. But we do have an ethical responsibility to use some of our wealth to save lives. And, you know, he uses the example that if there's a toddler in the pond, it deserves to be saved. Then we must be willing to sully our clothing a little bit to save that child's life. And I think that's something we are able to do here. We know ourselves, we know our boundaries, but we're willing to step out of those boundaries and our comfort zone. Now, let me make no mistake about it. In the eyes of millions around the world, most of what we have would be considered what? A luxury item, okay? And so we may not consider it a luxury item, but most of the world does not live in the luxury that most of the people, many of the people in the United States do live in. So we know that there's a cost for us to be a part of this culture. And there's a standard of living that many of us understand. But there's also a cost of poverty right in our hometown, and a standard of living that many people do not have access to. Winston Churchill told us, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And I think that could be a motto for Unitarian Universalists. Here's where the rubber hits the road. We talk about, we truly believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as well as the interdependence of all life. But we also do something about it here. When we look at the challenges, we know that there are many. Joanna Macy Active Hope talks about these challenges, and she tells us, quote, we need to counter the voices that say we're not up to the task, that we're not good enough, we're not strong enough, we're not enough or wise enough to make any difference. We fear that the mess we're in is too awful to look at, or that we won't be able to cope with the distress it brings up. We need to find a way. We need to find a way through that fear. Now, whether you're 7 years old or 94 years old, we all address the fear. How do we do that? The spiral work that reconnects us is something that we look at. It's a spiral. How do we look and reflect on who we are? How can we be larger, stronger, deeper, more creative than we've been brought up to believe? How can we be empowered? And we do this through journeys. And she talks about 4 successive movements or stations, coming from gratitude, honoring our pain for the world, seeing with new eyes, and going forth. That's a wonderful metaphor as well as the intersection of prayer as service. Be grateful. Honor that there is pain in the world. Look at the world with new eyes. What can you do? And go forth. Now, that might be the true power of prayer for us, actually asking with a conscious awareness that what we are not able to do ourselves. How can we reach out to others, the earth, our companions, with meditation, reflections, and words. Because I do believe that service without a spiritual underpinning can just be an ego-boosting act. And we see that all the time. We see the photo shots of someone important spending 5 minutes giving out food. And as soon as the camera closes, that person's gone, right? So we see that. But I look at ego boosting in a positive way. Our egos, giving in service, is meaningful to us. And sometimes we don't know why we're doing it. Like, why are we doing this? When I signed up to do the farm dinner, it's a lot of work. And so I get that, but I feel good about it. We feel empowered by service. We feel humbled by our little bit we can give, but the cumulative effect that it has on others and ourselves. So we are brought into new journeys by overcoming our fears. Now, I give an example because someone celebrated her 94th birthday last week. Sharon Scholl. Sharon's here, right? Raise your hand, Sharon, so we can all see and say congratulations again. And Sweet Doug did the food for it, which was wonderful. But Sharon has mentored so many poets and still continues to do that, Hope being one of them, in this over these years, and continues to do that with poetry circles. So the idea of service and creativity does not end. It does change. We have to reflect where we are. Can we do this? Sometimes with young children, you can't do everything you'd like to do because your service is to your young children. Sometimes as you get older, you can't do everything just because you may not drive in the evening. So there's all types of things that look at obstacles but are actually sources of new avenues of service. And so that's what I want to look at. Because if we think about what we're going to do, we take risks, but we also have wisdom. For example, mentoring a young person coming out of prison may not be our particular act of service. It may be. Reading to 4-year-olds may drive some of us crazy, but it may be the sweet spot for another person. Spending time with an older adult in the nursing home may be our sweet spot. And I remember when my mom was in a kazoo band. You know what a kazoo is? It's not quite as exciting as the ukulele circle, Cece and Ken. But there was a pianist, and they would bring their kazoos, and they would do all the old songs at the nursing homes. And my mom would say, "Oh, we're going to see the old people." And I remember telling my mom, I said, "Mom, you know, you are one of the old people." And she goes, "Oh no, we are young compared to these. We are the youngsters. We're in our 70s. They're in their 90s and more. So they call us young people." And so it really didn't make a difference. You know, it was spending time together. So one thing that I do know, as we take risks and change, as we grow into different spaces, sometimes our children get older and we're able to do things. Sometimes we retire, we're able to do things. And sometimes we can't do other things, so we have to switch service. One thing I know for us is that service is prayer. It is a gift to ourselves, to others, and it is a response to the divine that tells us that we will reap benefits as well as others in service. That through transformation, we will indeed be personally transformed. Now, I'm not sure that I can tell you how that transformation happens. That's not really important. But Buddha said something that I loved. He said, quote, "If you knew what I know about the power of giving, you would not let a single meal pass without sharing it in some way." And that's powerful for me. So today, when you provided, or you were providing service auctions for our service auction, service items, or you make a donation for one, Don't underestimate this power. This is transformation to you and to those that are receiving. Some donated an item in love, and someone gives the church a donation for that item. And the next thing you know, it helps the church have the funds to operate, allows us each and every month to do our services, which include a community collection that furthers our transformational reach. So as we are aware, every Sunday, as we say, generosity is a spiritual practice, one that enlarges the heart and lightens the spirit. For no matter how much or how little we have, in the sharing of it, both the one who gives and the one who receives are blessed. Let service be our prayer, and let us pray every day through our acts of service and justice. Thank you.